I'm just a freshman, but I represent a state that is deeply frustrated and puzzled. Since when do Republicans load up a tax cut extension with so many riders that they're afraid to even bring it to a vote on the floor of this chamber? I am puzzled, I am frustrated, and with that, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The senator from Wyoming.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, first I'd like to ask unanimous consent that Clay Robbins, who is an intern serving in your office, would have the privilege of the floor for the remainder of today.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. And, Mr. President, I would like to speak today in support of the Keystone XL pipeline. The Keystone XL pipeline is one of the largest shovel-ready infrastructure projects in the United States. It would bring oil from North Dakota and from Canada to refineries along the Gulf Coast and in the Midwest. Pipeline would strengthen Americans' energy security and create tens of thousands of new jobs. These are good-paying jobs, Mr. President. But don't take my word for it. Just consider what representatives of organized labor have had to say. The president of the Building and Construction Trades Department of the AFL-CIO said, quote, "Any discussion of the Keystone XL project begins and ends with one word, jobs." He went on to say, throughout America's heartland, the Keystone pipeline represents the prospect for 20,000 immediate jobs without one single dollar of government assistance. The General President of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters stated that, quote, "The Keystone Pipeline project will offer working men and women a real chance to earn a good wage and support their families in this difficult economic climate." And consider the remarks of the General President of the Laborers International Union of North America. He said, "This project is not just a pipeline, but a lifeline, he says, for thousands of desperate working men and women." Well, House Democrats also recognize the importance of this Keystone XL pipeline project. This summer, 47 House Democrats voted in favor of the bill to require a decision on the pipeline by November 1st. Well, and on October 19th, 22 House Democrats wrote a letter to the President. This is what they told President Obama. They said, quote, "America cannot afford to say no to this privately funded, jobs-creating infrastructure project." And they went on to say, "It is in our national interest to have a presidential permit issued for the Keystone XL as soon as possible." Senate Democrats also support the Keystone XL pipeline. Senator Baucus of Montana has said we need to put Montanans back to work and cannot afford further delays to the Keystone XL pipeline. Senator Tester, also from Montana, says the Keystone pipeline will create Montana jobs, and it should not have to wait 14 months for an up-and-down decision. Senator Manchin, West Virginia, says, "I'm for the Keystone pipeline." He said all the trade unions, everyone's for it. It creates thousands of jobs. Senator Begich, Senator Landrieu have also written in support of the pipeline. Well, until recently, President Obama suggested that he, too, believed the pipeline to be in the interest of the United States. On April 6th, the President held a town hall event in Pennsylvania. There he received a question about Canadian oil sands production. In response, the President of the United States discussed the Keystone XL pipeline. This is what he said. He said, "Importing oil from countries that are stable and friendly is a good thing." Let me repeat. Importing oil, this is the President of the United States said, importing oil from countries that are stable and friendly is a good thing. However, now on October 10th, the President reversed course and he showed a different side. After protests from environmentalists, the President decided to punt his decision on the pipeline until after the 2012 presidential election. Many in the press say that the President delayed his decision so that environmental activists would turn out on Election Day to support him. If true, the President's decision to delay the approval of the pipeline is not only political, it was also cynical. Cynical because these environmental activists believe that they can shut down Canadian oil sands production. They believe they can shut down the production by stopping construction of the Keystone XL pipeline. Simply isn't true, and the President knows it. But maybe the President doesn't want to be honest with these environmental activists. Maybe he just doesn't want to disappoint them. Doesn't want his political base to stay home on Election Day. But don't take it from me, Mr. President. Consider what Austin Goolsbee had to say. Now, many members of this chamber know that he's the former chairman of the White House Council of Economic Advisors. This White House Council, President Obama's Council of Economic Advisors. This is what he said. He said it's a bit naive to think that the tar sands would not be developed if they don't build that pipeline. He said eventually it's going to be built. It may go to the Pacific, it may go through Nebraska, but it's going to be built somewhere. Again, Mr. Goolsbee was President Obama's top economic advisor. So why are the Canadian oil sands going to be developed? Well, because the oil sands are a huge national asset for Canada, and Canada will not allow that asset to be stranded. So let's consider the findings of the Canadian Energy Research Institute. Now, this is an independent, not-for-profit research entity that was established in 1975. Its mission is to provide relevant, independent, and objective economic research on energy and on environmental issues. Well, this June, they released a report, and it was entitled, "The Economic Impacts of Staged Development of Oil Sands Projects in Alberta, 2010-2035, a 25-year future look." This report looked at a variety of scenarios, including one in which no new pipeline capacity is built. Under that scenario, the Institute estimated that the total impact on Canada's GDP would be about $2.3 trillion over those 25 years. It also estimated that the compensation for Canadian employees will reach almost $650 billion over this same period. It estimated that the direct, the indirect employment in Canada will grow from 390,000 jobs to a peak of 490,000 jobs in 2020, just 9 years from now. Well, it also estimated that the royalties to Alberta will grow from approximately $3.6 billion in 2010 to a peak of $22.6 billion in 2020, in 10 years, from $3.6 billion to $22.6 billion royalties to Alberta. Again, the Canadian Energy Research Institute made all of these estimates assuming that no additional pipeline capacity will be built. So what do these estimates mean? Well, they mean that Canada will continue to develop its oil resources whether or not Keystone XL or any other pipeline is built. They mean that the environmental activists trying to shut down oil sands production are naive at best. They also mean that the President Obama, is once again failing to lead, that he once again is failing to be forthright with the American people, and that he is unwilling and failing to make difficult decisions. The President is showing that he thinks that his job is really the only job that matters. Of course, we all know that Canada will not sit idly by. Canada will add additional pipeline capacity whether or not Keystone XL is built. Canada's Prime Minister Stephen Harper has said that the decision to delay approval of Keystone XL demonstrates, to his words, the necessity of making sure that we're able to access Asian markets, Mr. President, for our energy products. That's what the Canadian Prime Minister had to say, and he was just in Washington last week. Alberta's Premier Alison Redford said that the decision to delay approval of the pipeline, quote, is a clear reminder about the strategic importance of diversifying our export markets. Clear reminder about the strategic importance of diversifying our export markets. In other words, Canada has a tremendous amount of oil, and Canada will ensure that its oil is brought to market. May go to the United States, may go to China, may go to another country, but Canada's oil will be brought to market. Thus, the question for President Obama is very simple, very straightforward. Is it in America's interest to reduce our dependence on oil from the Persian Gulf and from Venezuela? Is it in America's interest to create tens of thousands of new jobs at a time of 8.6% unemployment? The answer is abundantly obvious. The answer, of course, is yes. It is in America's best interest to reduce our dependence on oil from the Persian Gulf and Venezuela. It is in America's interest to create tens of thousands of new jobs at a time of 8.6% unemployment. It is time that the President started to say yes and stops saying no to jobs and to energy. Yes to energy security, yes to tens of thousands of new, good-paying jobs. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Acott.
Senator Barrasso and others talking about the Keystone Oil Pipeline. A provision in the payroll tax cut bill passed by the House would require the President to make a quick decision on whether to accept or reject the pipeline that would run from Canada to the Gulf Coast. Today, Senator McConnell objected to holding a vote on that bill here in the Senate. The Associated Press writes that officials say Democratic leaders are considering whether to jettison their demand for a surtax on millionaires as a way of covering the cost of a Social Security payroll tax cut extension. If party leaders go ahead, it would mark a concession to Republicans. The disclosure came as Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid and other Democrats went to the White House to meet with President Obama. As we wait for a senator to speak, the National Journal writes that as President Obama and congressional leaders continue fighting over their different paths on extending the payroll tax holiday, the prospect looms for a government shutdown at midnight on Friday. Senior Republican aides concede that there will be a need for another short-term spending measure. And also, discussions are underway about the House adjourning for the weekend, with members returning to Washington next week. There were 2 votes in the Senate today on balanced budget amendments to the Constitution. The Associated Press writes that the 2 proposals were doomed by the partisanship that dominates Congress. All but 1 Republican voted against a Democratic measure, and every Democrat opposed the GOP-backed version. Amendments to the Constitution must be approved by a 2/3 of the House and Senate and 3/4 of state legislatures. With those votes today, Congress fulfilled a commitment to take up a balanced budget amendment that was part of the agreement last summer to raise the government's debt limit.
Mr. Alexander.
The Washington Times is writing that Congress once again is flirting with a partial government shutdown for the third time this year, and Republicans are accusing Democrats of blocking the critical year-end funding bill in order to use it as leverage in the payroll tax cut negotiations. The current stopgap funding bill runs out on Friday, and while those writing the replacement bill say it is ready to go, Democratic leaders insist that it's not done, though they acknowledge that it could be wrapped up speedily if all sides want to. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid said that he will not allow a final full-year spending bill to pass until he and House Republicans work out an extension of the payroll tax cuts. That's in the Washington Times. Meanwhile, our Capitol Hill producer says the House-Senate compromise on defense programs could come up here in the Senate. We spoke with a reporter about it.
Megan Scully of Congressional Quarterly joining us. She covers the debate on defense authorization, the conference report. How did the House and Senate negotiators resolve the issue of detainee policy?
They essentially accepted language that was in the Senate bill, the most controversial of which was a provision that would require military custody for terrorism suspects, foreign terrorism suspects. They've made some tweaks to address concerns by the White House, but which has threatened to veto the bill over this this provision. But it's too soon to tell whether those tweaks are going to satisfy the White House's demand.
So the White House has not responded to the tweaks, as you referred to them, that have changed the bill.
Sure. They say that they are reviewing the final conference report, or at least that was what the White House was saying as late Tuesday. We'll see if they put anything out officially today, weighing in one way or another on the final bill.
Now, you write in today's CQ about an audit requirement being dropped. Why was it done, and what does that mean to the bill?
Well, getting to a full financial audit has been an ongoing problem for the Defense Department, which is one of only 2 federal agencies that can't audit its books. The Senate version of the bill would have required an audit by 2014, which is 3 years ahead of the current target date of 2017, and the goal that Secretary Panetta has set for the department. There was concerns, though, in the House and among Pentagon officials that codifying that 2014 date was taking it a step too far. Several department officials said as late as the summer that 2017 was still a stretch. So by putting 2014 into law, it might have been an unrealistic requirement for the department.
So the whole audit requirement has been dropped from the conference report.
The requirement still stands at 2017 for the date. The conference report does require the Defense Department to report back to the Hill on its goal of getting to an audit by 2014, but it's not set in stone.
What other program or policy highlights can you tell us about in the underlying measure?
Sure. Well, there are new sanctions in the bill targeting the central bank of Iran. Those sanctions are designed to force a potential economic collapse that would, then move the country, force the country's hand at abandoning its alleged nuclear weapons program. That provision has drawn some concerns from the White House as well. There were some tweaks made in conference, but that language has bipartisan support. It passed the Senate on a 100-0 vote.
What about in the House? When it comes up for a vote, the conference report, will it pass?
It is expected to, yes.
Megan Scully with Congressional Quarterly, an update on the debate today in the House on the Defense Authorization Conference report. Thanks for checking in with us.
Thanks for having me.
While the House-Senate compromise on the defense programs bill is likely to come up here in the Senate this afternoon, we do expect general speeches until 5 p.m. Eastern Time.
objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I ask unanimous consent to be able to speak in morning business.
Without objection.
As if in morning business. Mr. President, we're at a time in the calendar that usually is a time of excellent anticipation. Christmas is coming, holidays are coming, people are trying to get their families in order and do the shopping and all of the things that you have to do. And it would seem that this is a moment of fairly happy days, and the holiday season's here, but these aren't happy times for many Americans. Across our country, families are fighting to keep their heads above water. Some parents don't know how they're going to put food on the table tonight, much less presents under the Christmas tree or during the Hanukkah holidays. And that's why our side of the aisle is fighting to continue and expand a tax cut that has benefited millions of working families this year. This is a tax cut for people who really need it, families who depend on a paycheck. With a payroll tax cut, the typical family in my state of New Jersey, would receive an extra $40 a week starting next year. And that's what a typical household in the Northeast pays for gasoline or health care each week. $40 a week adds up to $2,100 a year. And for parents who are struggling, as many are, to make ends meet, an extra $2,100 goes a long way to help buy groceries or pay the electric bill or purchase medicines. It can help pay for child care, preschool or college tuition, the necessities that help ensure children's success in life. To make sure that all working families continue receiving this much-needed relief next year, we're asking America's millionaires, people who earn over $1 million a year, to pay their fair share of what the country needs to get ourselves back in a reasonable balance. But the Republicans won't even allow us to vote on a bill that their colleagues in the House approved last night. I want to just spend a minute here. The House passed a bill last night, and it included the tax relief for some, and we should take it here and consider it. But the Republicans won't even let us bring up the bill that passed in the House last night, and there's a question of why. Why won't they let us do it? There's obviously a hidden meaning here. But what we see is the Republicans are acting like Scrooges. The pictures shows a mean-looking guy, as we see, and that's what they want to do for Christmas. For GOP Scrooges, this isn't the season of giving. It's time to take things away. He said, no payroll tax cut for you this year. They want to take away the tax cut for ordinary working families. The Republican Scrooges want to take away unemployment insurance benefits for 1 million people. Imagine, people who are dependent on unemployment insurance at times when they're out of work, to help sustain their families, put food on the table, to try and just keep their heads above water. But that doesn't matter to our friends on the Republican side. Mr. President, today in America, there is only one job available for each 4 unemployed people. This isn't the time to cut unemployment benefits. Republicans also want to weaken safeguards that keep our air clean, filling our atmosphere with poisons and endangering the health of our children. They want to weaken those safeguards. To add insult to injury, the Republicans are also trying to ram through a massive pipeline that will carry toxic materials into our country. Toxic materials. We are so conscious of what damage the toxic environment can do to our families, to our children. But they want to have a pipeline that will carry toxic materials into our country. They want to make it easier for coal-fired industrial facilities to foul the air toxins, to spew air toxins into our neighborhoods. It's hard to believe. Instead of gifts, the Republican Scrooges want lumps of coal in the stockings and coal pollution in our lungs. Mr. President, many families, it's a tradition to teach children to welcome Santa Claus during the holidays. And this year, we're going to tell our kids to hide away from the Republican Scrooges. We're not going to alarm our children and tell them that things that are difficult may be even more difficult if some tax relief that's proposed for working-class families isn't available to them. Republican priorities are different. Want to raise taxes on middle-class families, families who work for a living, to protect luxuries for millionaires, nice boats, airplanes. And I don't mind, they've made the money, what they buy for it. But at least carry the fair share of our financial needs in this country. The Republican priorities say they're for lower taxes, but that only goes for the jet set. When it comes to cutting taxes for working families, the Republican mantra is, hey, we got to take care of the wealthy. We got to watch out for the wealthy. Make sure they're okay. Don't ask them to carry more of the load. It's not a good time to deal with them. After all, maybe they'll be big contributors to our political campaigns. Let's not kid ourselves. American millionaires don't need help. They don't need the Republicans' help. Since 1980, our country's wealthiest 1% of the people, working people, have seen their average household income increase by 55%. Let me just restate that. Since the 1980s, our country's wealthiest 1% have seen their average household income increase by 55%. Enormous. But the bottom 90%, average household income, has not increased at all. As a matter of fact, it's gone down because the cost of living has gone up much faster than even any raises that come through. And even though incomes are growing for the very wealthy, their tax rates are actually going down. Their taxes are going down. We can also look at the chief executive officers to see how well the wealthy are faring. CEOs at the largest companies are now paid an average salary of $11 million a year. Note that. Largest companies, CEOs are now paid an average salary of $11 million a year. That's 343 times as much as the average worker's salary of $33,000. This comparison is so hard to reconcile. CEOs of the largest companies, an average salary of $11 million a year, and the average worker, $33,000 a year. Where's the equity in this? When we send the people out to fight, put on the country's uniforms, do the jobs, build the foundations, make sure the country is strong, $33,000 a year. That's tough. And just a few decades ago, the pay gap between CEOs and workers was much more modest. The CEOs, again, the CEO, people at the top of these companies, were paid an average of 42 times as much as the average worker, as we see it in this chart. The chart demonstrates what, in the 1980s, the CEOs made 42 times the average worker's pay, so the difference wasn't that obvious or that big. In 2010, CEOs made 343 times the average worker's pay. There's no equity there, Mr. President. I come from the corporate world, and I know what big salaries are. I've seen it, my own company. But the one thing you have to do is at least encourage the people who are working for you to understand that they have a chance in life to provide the things that we all talk about for our children: a college education, a decent prospect of a decent job, prospect of being able to take care of your own family. Mr. President, the numbers make it clear. Our goal should not be protecting millionaires. They don't need our help. We should be focused on protecting Medicare, food safety, home heating for the poor, and Head Start for little kids who have a first chance to learn, to understand education, to see how important it is to learn things, to start reading books at an early age, to start having conversations with their parents about what is going on in this world. Want to take those children out of the Head Start facility. So many of them, 200,000, has been proposed in some of the House budgets. Take them out of the Head Start school. But our Republican colleagues don't want to hear about that. They continue asking the poor, the middle class, the elderly, and our children to bear the entire burden of these tough times. The Republicans now remind me of what accountants are like. They're people who are obsessed, obligated to deal with the bottom line. There's no soul, no humanity, no compassion, not around here, unless it's for the wealthy. They have compassion for themselves. Let's be clear. It does not hurt those of us who've been successful to pay our fair share. Mr. President, I remind those within my voice who hear me, we have two wars going on. We've got people paying a terrible price to serve our country's needs. Terrible price. And this is no time for those who are fortunate enough to make above $1 million to say, hey, I want to help carry this burden. I don't want to ask people who are scratching for a living, just trying to keep ends meet. I don't want to ask them to do more without saying, I want to do my share. Mr. President, I was lucky, ran a very big company. I want to do my share. That's why I'm here, And that's what I'm talking about. To those who make more than $1 million a year, I say, look in the mirror. Ask yourself, if you could succeed without help from anyone else, or did your country help you achieve your prosperity? Was it people who built the buildings and built the infrastructure and manned the jobs all across the country, service jobs and all? They built the foundation upon which those who make $1 million a year build their futures, build their fortunes. That's what happens. But there's not the respect for the hardworking families that we like to see. So I ask our Republican colleagues, think about the true meanings of the holidays. It's not Halloween, it's not trick or treat, because otherwise that's what the game looks like. This time of the year is about coming together, caring about your fellow man. This should be a season of giving, not taking away from necessities that are from our country's most vulnerable. Mr. President, we all remember at the end of A Christmas Carol when Ebenezer Scrooge opened his heart and became a hero. We need the same kind of miracle here in Congress. We need the Republican Scrooges to have a change of heart and work with us to help our fellow Americans this holiday season. We need them to help us continue and expand the tax cuts for working families. We need them to help us continue unemployment insurance benefits for the jobless and clean air safeguards for our children. And we need them to help us protect the programs that benefit the people who need them most, who we need to keep our foundation strong. To our Republican colleagues, we say, come on, let's work together. Let's do this. Let's put the acrimony aside. Let's put the selfishness aside and say those who work every day for a living and try to keep things together, and we have millions of people who are looking for jobs who can't find them right now. Let's work together to make sure our children and grandchildren inherit an America that's even stronger than the one that we inherited. Show the heart of America. That'll be the best gift we could ever give them. I yield the floor.
The senator from Washington.
Mr. President, there are no more important issues for middle-class families across America than jobs and the economy. This is what they want their elected officials to be focused on, and it's exactly what I think we ought to be working on every single day. That's why I've come to the Senate floor again and again to urge my Republican colleagues to stop blocking our attempts to extend and expand the middle-class tax cut so many of our families are counting on. And it's why I come to the floor once again today to discuss the urgent need to maintain federal unemployment benefits for middle-class families across our country. Mr. President, this should be an easy issue. Unemployment benefits provide a lifeline for millions of families, and it would be simply wrong to cut this support off while the economy continues to struggle and so many of our workers are having so much trouble finding work. Right now, there are more than 4 unemployed workers for every single job opening. If every opening was filled tomorrow, we would still have more than 10 million workers across the country without a job to even apply for. Additionally, nearly half of all unemployed workers have been out of a job for 6 months or longer, which is higher than we have seen for more than 60 years. So millions of Americans are unemployed today, not because they don't want to work and not because they don't have valuable skills, but simply because they found themselves in an economy that isn't creating jobs as quickly as we need it to. Those unemployed workers are desperate to get back on the job, and unemployment benefits make all the difference for them and their families while they scour the want ads and pound the pavement and send out resume after resume after resume. Madam President, I recently sent a letter to my constituents asking for their stories about what these benefits actually mean to them and their families, and the response to that was unbelievable. Within a few days, I received hundreds of emails. People sent me videos. They sent me pictures of their families. And I received story after story from workers and families from across my home state of Washington who are fighting to make ends meet in this very tough economy and who can't afford to have the rug pulled out from underneath them. One of these stories came from a woman named Vicki who lived in Maple Valley, Washington. She was an unemployed single mom, lost her apartment, and told me she now has to share a room with her son in a relative's home. Vicki told me she has made every effort, going to interviews, sending out her resume to hundreds of employers, still not able to find a job. She understands that in this economy finding a job won't be easy, but she's going to keep trying. And the support that she received from unemployment benefits has kept her and her family afloat and made all the difference. She said those benefits allowed her to put food on the table for her family and gas in her car so she could go to job interviews. She told me, and I quote, "If I lose my unemployment benefits, I don't know what I will be able to do to provide for my son." Well, Madam President, she's not alone. I heard from older Americans like Judy. She's a grandmother of 5 from Bothell, Washington. Judy told me she's been working for 47 years before being laid off from her teaching job in 2009. She said that over the last 12 years, she's worked to teach adults the skills they need to move into jobs as bookkeepers and receptionists and schedulers. But in this economy, although she was an expert in her area, even she can't find a job in those fields. She wrote to me saying, quote, "I want to work, but nobody will hire older citizens, no matter how much experience they have. I started looking for jobs at the pay level I was at when I was laid off. But after being unemployed now for 2 years, I'm even looking at jobs for less than half of that. Still, I'm told, my experience does not match their requirements." Madam President, for Judy, unemployment benefits are not the solution. She wants a job. But they provided her with some critical support while she looked for that last job before she can retire. I also heard from a woman named Sheila from Bellevue, Washington. Like Judy, she's close to retirement, but she was laid off last year from an engineering technician job that she told me she loved, and now she's desperate to get back to work. After sending out over 500 resumes since then, she's had 4 interviews. In her email to me, Sheila wrote, and I quote, "I was devastated when I was laid off. I now look for work 7 days a week. I've worked hard my entire life, and I don't want everything I've worked for to disappear." She told me that's what would happen if her unemployment benefits run out now. Finally, Madam President, I received a video message from Scott in Olalla, Washington. Scott told me that after working at the same company for 20 years, he was laid off in March and filed his first unemployment claim in the 30-plus years he's been in the workforce. He said he always thought unemployment insurance was for the other people, never thought he would be the one collecting it. Now he calls it a godsend for him and his family. In his video, Scott told me about the uncertainty his family would face if his benefits expired before he could get back on the job. If this happened, Scott said, and I quote, "I can't imagine what it would do to my family to lose our home. We spend our money wisely. We live well within our means. But if we lost our home, we would be just another statistic. The last thing I want to do is to explain to my wife and my daughter that we have to leave our home." And that's exactly what he said would happen if he loses his unemployment benefits in this tough economy. So, Madam President, those are just a few of the many, many stories I received. There are so many of them out there, millions of people across America, including about 100,000 in my home state of Washington, will stand to lose their benefits that they count on if Congress does not act by the end of this year in just a few short weeks. These workers are not looking for a handout. They don't want to be a burden, but they need support while they get back on their feet and back on the job. And in this struggling economy, maintaining these unemployment benefits is critical. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office has said maintaining unemployment benefits is one of the most effective policy tools we have now to boost the economy and get money into the pocket of our consumers. If they're cut off, it wouldn't just be devastating for the families who count on this support, it's going to hurt our small businesses and communities to have billions of dollars pulled away from consumers who spend it every month on food and rent and clothing. So, Madam President, we cannot afford to have this lifeline cut off. Our great country has always been a place that stands with our middle-class families when times are tough and that gives them the support they need to get back on their feet and back on the job and contributing to their communities once again. So I urge all of our colleagues to stand with us as the holidays approach to maintain these unemployment insurance benefits that so many of our families are counting on, and to keep working to cut taxes for the middle class and get our economy moving again and put our country back to work. And Madam President, on that last point, before I finish, I want to join our majority leader and so many others who called today on Republicans to stop blocking their own bill and allow it to be brought up for an up or down vote. We know that the Republican bill that passed the House yesterday is going to fail. It's bad policy, and many in their own caucus apparently don't support it. Their bill takes some of the policies we're fighting for to support the middle class, including unemployment benefits, waters them down, and then adds a whole bunch of Tea Party red meat to attract the Republican support it needed to pass the House. Madam President, I am focused on delivering the tax cut that middle-class families need and deserve, so I will vote against the Republican bill if it's allowed to come up. But I can't believe that our Republican colleagues are now preventing us from taking a vote on their own bill and then not allowing us to come together, which we need to do in these last few days before the holidays, to get a bipartisan deal and get it to the American people. They expect us to do this job. That's what's holding us up. Madam President, I urge our colleagues to sit down, work out an agreement so that we can all celebrate the holidays with our families, and the families out there who are counting on us will know we've done the job for them. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.